Alrighty. Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to our Monday night live stream for Week 14 of the 2024 fantasy football season. I think I speak for everyone when I say, first and foremost, we anticipated Jameis Winston was going to throw some interceptions, but I did not anticipate that he was going to travel 495 passing yards, 4 passing touchdowns on his way to throwing 3 picks, 2 of which went to, 3 picks, 2 of which went to the house. What an incredible game for fantasy purposes. Jerry Jeudy, obviously the thumbnail of today's live stream. What a ridiculous revenge game of any. Elijah Moore played well. David Njoku in the first half, 2 touchdowns, fantastic. On the other side, quite disappointing overall. Bo Nix did not look great. His overall passing completion percentage, they were just letting him rip the ball. I thought, oh, you know what? He hasn't thrown a pick. Two picks in the last 10 games. He should be perfectly fine. Throws 2 picks immediately. I jinxed it. I know I did. Either way, over the course of the next hour plus, we're talking all things fantasy football related going into Week 14. As the intro music was playing, I did see many of you asking, how much should we be spending on Isaac Guerendo? Everything. Every single fab you have left goes to Isaac Guerendo. If, in fact, you're in a position in which you're like, hey, listen, Andrew, I don't even need a running back. I got Josh Jacobs. I got Jonathan Taylor. I've got Bucky Irving. The rest of my season is good to go. I'd still say you throw in all your fab to make sure that an opponent you're playing up against is not going to have them on roster to use them against you in upcoming weeks. I'm that excited about the potential of Isaac Guerendo going forward. Earlier today, we talked about him, obviously, as the only priority option if you're in need of a running back. If you need wide receivers, tight ends, quarterbacks going into this bye-apocalypse with 6 teams on bye, check out the video that we posted today in regards to Week 14 waiver wire. Outside of that, again, let's get into answering any and all fantasy football related questions. Do me a favor, guys. Let me know if, in fact, your league is, whether it is a waiver wire pickup question and or potentially a trade question, starter sit question, whatever it ends up being. Please be sure to include your scoring format. The more context you provide, standard, half PPR, full PPR, the easier it is for me. Thank you. Alrighty. So the first super chat of the day was sent in via Andrew Mitchell, who says, hey, Andrew, picked up Jameis late yesterday, started pretty late last night, knocked myself out of the playoffs. I'm raging. Brother, that is rough. That is rough. I don't blame you. I would be pretty upset as well. If that's the way that you go, that is tough. Last night's weather was, we saw the weather last night. And even, listen, hold on, wait. Before we even get into answering any more questions, Andrew Mitchell, first and foremost, my condolences to you and your season. Let's hope for the best going forward next season. But yeah, if Purdy was the dagger and Jameis on the bench was the way to end it, that's just, it is what it is. At least you'll have the next couple weekends off where you can not have to watch football and not have to stress. But in regards to the statement I wanted to make, Josh Allen, the first player ever that I've ever seen to score a passing and receiving touchdown in a singular play ever. Am I incorrect there? I know Marcus Mariota has had a pass tipped in which he caught it. I don't think that counted as a receiving and passing touchdown in the same play. Josh Allen he's starting to do some stuff that is not legal. Okay, we need to start banning these things in leagues. We're not allowed to catch and receive a touchdown on the same play. Anyway, God's Gang sent in a question, says, let's go. I think your autocorrect probably cooked your message here, God's Gang. Says, I squeaked it out by a point. My opponent had Lutz. Oh, geez, that was nerve-wracking. Yeah, I would imagine. Keep pulling out close ones. I had Judy on the bench. Yeah, that's rough. Whew. Hey, at least we were able to capture a win. That's really it. As long as you're able to capture the dub, that's all that matters. Somebody asked, drop Chubb for Isaac Guerendo? Absolutely. Listen, Chubb is washed. Let's be honest here, guys. Let's not even get it twisted. In the grand scheme of things, this season is not going to be a season we're going to see Nick Chubb succeed in any sort of facet. Sure, there are going to be games in which he's been given the ball on the 1-yard line and he's going to punch it in for a touchdown, but outside of those scenarios, very much so a non-startable piece, especially if, in fact, the matchup is not an advantageous one within the given week. Someone said Guerendo or Brian Robinson Jr. for what? Rest of season? Because Guerendo's obviously, if we're talking about rest of season, I'd rather have Brian Robinson still because Eckler's gone. And in the absence of Eckler, there will be more opportunity going in Brian Robinson's direction. So I'd still probably lean in that direction because I do think that the offense itself will function at a higher capacity in comparison. Let's see here. Okay. Where are we at? Josh Allen's a beast. Listen, He's beyond a beast at this point. LJ says, I just won by 118.8 to 117.6 on the second pick six from Denver. That is ridiculous. And then you got an extra pick six, or not pick six, but you got an extra pick just to, separate it just in case if there was a point change or any sort of stat change, you're good to go. James Cook saved my week. Yeah, James Cook breaking out that run. Dude, that game last night, I mean, it looked like people were sliding. And, you found open ground quite often within those scenarios. People couldn't even get out of their stances. But, yeah, James Cook clutched it up. Found ourselves with a dub. It's fantastic to see that, obviously. I would have loved to have seen more receiving utilization from him, but they got a lot of other running backs in the mix. Hopefully that's not going to consistently stay a part of the overall equation there, though. Disley says with 0 points. Yeah, Will Disley with 0 points was rough. Well, look, here's the thing. The offense as a whole, outside of, Lad McConkey, that Chargers offense was fried. I mean, if it wasn't for the fact that Kirk Cousins threw 4 interceptions, they should have gotten blown out. Like, offensively, very many stallouts. I mean, I honestly didn't expect them to struggle as much as they did in that circumstance. Obviously, the lack of a running game will lead to that, and that certainly showed. We're going to have to wait and see if there's going to continue to be an issue running the ball within that offensive scheme. I mean, they didn't even have to force Justin Herbert to throw the ball much. What did he have, like 23 passing attempts? If you're not going to throw the ball much, you're not going to run the ball successfully, the offense as a whole is just not going to function to the capacity that we want. Obviously, Will Disley, that's back-to-back weeks with a disappointing performance, so we got to be careful there. Maddie says, are we trusting Jacobs this week against the Lions? You have to. I mean, look, if you have Josh Jacobs, you got to play him every week. That's the kind of running back he is, regardless. All right, let's see here. We had a question that came in from Mando Jr., 97, says, if Njoku caught the last touchdown pass, I would have lost. Oh, my God. So, basically, the middle linebacker hiding behind the defensive line, and somehow Jameis, with his LASIK vision, not seeing him, saved you the week. Congratulations. That is fantastic. Yeah, if Njoku had gone for a hat trick, that would have been ridiculous. But, I mean, hey, listen, for future purposes, for the remainder of the season, for those of us who are wondering, I mean, at least when they get down into the red zone, they know who to send the ball in the direction of. As long as they continue to send the ball in the direction of Njoku as their priority threat within the red zone, that's all I can ask for. Trevor Lim says, I got Lamar and Mixon both on bye next week. I know it's still a bit early, but need to choose between the best quarterbacks and running backs to pick up off the waivers to fill in for them. Yeah, I mean, listen, again, if any of the players that are available here are available in this video that I'm pointing to right here, the waiver wire video that I posted earlier today, check them out. I mean, again, Russell Wilson's probably your best quarterback pickup, if not him. I mean, based on what we saw it's just 10 minutes ago, Jameis Winston could also be a potential pickup in play in that circumstance. As for quarterbacks that could fill in for the services of Lamar. As for running backs that would fill in for Mixon, just depends on what's available. If Garendo's available, that's your number one pickup of the week, Trevor. Let's see here. Richard Perez says, I have Knicks on bye next week. Pick up Winston. Might as well. I mean, at this point, I have no issue with it at all. If he's going to... Okay, look, listen. Jameis Winston can do one of two things. He's either going to kill your week or he's going to save your week. There is no in-between. He's either throwing 3 interceptions with 0 touchdowns or throwing 4 touchdowns with 3 interceptions. So it's either boom or bust with him, and I don't mind that, considering, again, the alternative options may not be, especially within your league, may not be as enticing within the upcoming week. If it's like him or Derek Carr, I'd rather just roll with Jameis at this point, if that's the kind of performances I need. Drew says, yet another crazy one. Look at Discord. All right, Drew, let me see what you got here, brother. Every Monday, Drew, you seem to have the most ridiculous showdowns that somehow come down to the wire. Let's see what you have here. How many points did you win by? Oh, brother, that is ridiculous. Let me save this one. Let me add this as a... I'm going to save it to my desktop, and then I'll show the chat what's going on here. What did you end up winning by, dude? That is a ridiculous... I mean, wow. One singular reception pretty much closes the gap. Okay, I just blasted the screen here. He won by quite literally... I mean, let me see the full extension of this team. You had Bo Nix, who barely ended up saving you, huh? Yeah, he could have threw that game very easily. Njoku played well. Fantastic. Yeah, I mean... Yeah, Njoku pretty much carried your team this week. And you'll obviously need to look elsewhere for quarterback for the future. Specifically this week with Bo Nix on bye. But that is ridiculous. Winning by 0.26. What a... Jeez. All right, let's see here. Low key in the chat says, maybe it's too early to ask. Week 14, would you run Njoku or flex Garrett Wilson. I don't know if I want to play any more Jets anymore. The Jets are just a disaster. At this point, let's just roll with it. I mean, it may be too early, and I might be a little bit of a confirmation bias or recency bias based on what I recently just saw from David Njoku in the offense, but I'd probably rather play David Njoku. That's 3 weeks in a row where Garrett Wilson's a complete no-show. He had a couple opportunities in terms of targets that were completely just overthrown by Aaron Rodgers, but quite frankly, he just doesn't get enough opportunities in terms of targets as a whole for us to think, yeah, we can trust him week in and week out regardless of matchup. It's really gotten to a bad place at this point. So for now, yeah, I mean, just roll with Njoku at the flex until otherwise noted. Let's see here. What's the best waiver wire quarterback for next week? It's probably going to be Russell Wilson, regardless. Charlene says, hey, Andrew, I have Daniels on bye. Do you trust Murray this week? As in Kyler Murray? Yeah, I don't have an issue with it. Indoors, not really a weather situation that we have to worry about. I mean, their entire season comes down to whether or not they could beat the Seahawks this week, so I'm okay with Murray there. Troy says, in a full PPR league, I need to sit one between London, Evans, Judy, Mooney, and Ridley. Yeah, Mooney is the one that ends up sitting this week out of all those available options. Joseph says, should I pick up Schultz? I have Disley. Yeah, it's probably a good idea to pick up Schultz. I mean, even though that offense as a whole doesn't really, outside of Mixon and Nico Collins, nobody else does anything, still, I'm okay with the idea of swapping for Schultz at the point, especially considering the upcoming match. I mean, look, the upcoming matchup for Disley is not bad against Kansas City, but if he's not getting, a healthy target opportunity share, it kind of speaks volumes as to whatever his potential usage could end up looking like. Chat, y'all dropping Tillman, says Matt. I mean, at this point, he's in your IR, right? So you can just leave him there. If he's going to be an issue where you want to go pick up somebody else, like let's say you're like, oh, I want to go pick up Adam Thielen instead, that's fine. But in the event in which you still have him on your IR, I don't think it should be an issue to where you are dropping him outright. Stroobs in the chat says, what's up, Andrew? Judy or Garendo off of waivers? Oh, that's a ridiculous question. You got to pick up Judy at that point. Especially if you're playing in a full PPR, I'd probably go in that direction. Garendo, look, he's going to be a solid option at running back, but he's going to score touchdowns every single week? Probably not. I mean, Jordan Mason wasn't scoring touchdowns every single week in the absence of Christian McCaffrey. There are going to be times in which and especially considering he doesn't get himself receiving utilization, like outside of Christian McCaffrey, none of these running backs have been highly utilized within the receiving game. So he's pretty much just going to be an every down runner, sure. But outside of, in the events in which he doesn't score touchdowns, it's going to be a little bit of a rough scenario. If you're in a full PPR, Judy's probably the more valuable. Especially with the overall usage as of late, these numbers are ridiculous. The target counts, regardless of matchup, regardless of defenses they're facing, I mean, him and Jameis Winston, their connection is too strong. Let's see here. Static says 65 fab, waiver number 2. We emptying the clip for Isaac. Yeah, you have to. Again, it's not even just a matter of like it's going to improve your team, but it's also going to theoretically prevent other teams in your league from getting him and using him against you in the fantasy playoffs, right? That's the whole point. Let's see here. Bench Rachaad White rest of season? No, not rest of season. Absolutely not. Look, there were multiple opportunities there where Rachaad White had goal line attempts. Unfortunately, just wasn't able to plug it in. So there are going to be opportunities here and there that are going to obviously exist that eventually he's going to fall into the end zone, just like he had on that 5-game streak of scoring touchdowns. So just all of a sudden, because of one bad game, I'm not going to lean away from Rachaad White. Obviously, if you're looking for alternative options, sure. But if your alternative options aren't better, I'm not going to lean away from him just because of one bad game. Let's see here. Jeremy says Denver's defense. Yeah, Denver's defense, man, coming in clutch. I mean, that's how Denver's defense is supposed to play. They're supposed to cause turnovers. They're not supposed to give up 497 passing yards and 4 passing touchdowns. I mean, we all know, and we've seen it all season long, Denver's defense is a problem for quarterbacks. I guess just not, Jameis Winston here. Let's see here. Trevor Lim says, you think Nick Westbrook-Ikine is reliable? I mean, he has scored a touchdown in 7 of the last 8 games. That speaks to reliability at that point. Now, obviously, it's very sketchy to trust it, but at this point, if you do it every week, eventually we're going to have to start buying the hype. Full PPR, drop Goddard for Disley? No, I don't want... Well, it depends if Goddard's going to miss time. I know that he sustained an injury. I don't know how, how long that could theoretically take for him to recover, if in fact he even does miss any time to recover. So we'll have to wait and see. Let's see. We scroll down here. Justice Reborn says, I'm running the entire Browns wide receiver offense from now on. Yeah, I mean, at this point, it just seems... Well, look, here's the thing. Judy, you could for sure. Judy and Njoku, you can run blindly. Elijah Moore and Cedric Tillman, those are going to be a little bit more difficult to run in instances in which their offense isn't as high powered as it was today. So those two are going to exist every single week regardless. Elijah Moore, Cedric Tillman, once he returns, those are going to be the wild cards of the offense. Let's see here. Ridley or Neighbors? If we're talking about this week in specific, the matchup against the Jaguars, the revenge game for Ridley, seems like a pretty enticing potential play there. But Neighbors against the Giants is pretty nice as well. I probably lean towards Neighbors as of right now. Super Dave says, what are we doing with Jonathan Brooks? You're just leaving him on the bench for now. You cannot play him. It's just not a viable enough option as it currently stands, unfortunately. We really thought it was going to be this offseason, but obviously Chuba Hubbard is just far too reliable within that offense. Raghav sends in a question, says, part one, tonight's loss after being up 37 to Judy on my opponent's team makes me have to... Okay, so you're in a must-win scenario next week. Who do I start at quarterback? Darnold, Love, or someone else off of waivers? Going into this week where we have Darnold versus the Falcons, I think that's a pretty good matchup. Love versus the Lions. Yeah, if I'm picking one of the two, I'd rather play Darnold as of right now. I'd be pretty comfortable with Sam Darnold this week against the Falcons. Thank you, Rakav. Let's see here. John War sent in a question, says, at tight end, keep Otten or grab Laporta / Freiermuth / Jawan Johnson, Komet, or Noah Gray. I mean, you're keeping Otten. I mean, dude, if he doesn't drop that touchdown, we're in good business. But obviously, a couple opportunities quite literally slipped out of his hands. But in this scenario, yeah, I mean, if you can also pick up an alternative option, besides having Otten on your team, potentially picking up Laporta, just to have an extra option that you could throw out there in the event of a good matchup, I don't mind that opportunity. But if we're just talking about outright who we're keeping rest of the season, just keep Otten. Thank you. Static says, is Kincaid a drop at this point? If he doesn't play this week, I mean, again, you're just going to leave him on your IR, right? That's the whole point. Let's see here. Luke C says, PPR, week 14, please rank Sincere, Amari Cooper, Ford, Parker Washington, and what is this last one? Dobbs. I don't even know if Dobbs is going to clear concussion protocol by Thursday. I'd venture to say that he probably might not, considering, again, it's a short week. So we'll keep an eye on that. As of right now, in the event in which, let's see here, you have, okay, I'm not playing Jerome Ford. I'm not playing Sincere. So it's either I'm either playing Parker Washington or Romeo Dobbs. If Romeo Dobbs clears the concussion protocol by Thursday, I'd be willing to roll with him. In the event in which he doesn't, then just pivot to playing Parker Washington this weekend. Thank you. Let's see here. Garrett Wilson or Jerry Jeudy rest season? I think we know the answer. I don't think anybody's going to say Jerry Jeudy is the second. He's top two and he's definitely not number two. So Jerry Jeudy would be the preferred over Garrett Wilson rest of the way. I mean, it's pretty evident based on the last couple weeks of production that, Garrett Wilson is just not a priority of the offense to get him continuous, opportunity shares that we deem viable. Ron the Don says volume leads to success, but consistency also leads to success. So Nick Westbrook is proving to, yeah, that's pretty true as well. Absolutely. Consistency definitely matters. Let's see here. Eric in the chat says, PPR, I need to cut two. Who's first and who's second? Chubb, Braylon Allen, Benson, Corum, Bigsby, Ray Davis, Vidal. Okay, if I'm cutting two of these players outright, the two that I cut are most likely... Okay, because here's the thing. I still want to have viable options that I could potentially rotate in. So I'm first and foremost, I'm cutting Vidal. I don't really have any interest in that. And then my second cut most likely ends up being Braylon. As long as there's no re-aggravation or no, potential for... Breece, I almost said Elijah Moore. For Breece Hall to miss time, those are the two that ends up getting the axe first and foremost. All right, we move on to a question that comes in from Deka. Where it says, please find my question. It says, Jaden is out next week. Win means I get in. Need to pick up quarterback off of the waivers. My options are Carr, Levis, Wilson, Winston, and Bryce Young. At this point, after today, it could either be Wilson or Winston. I still prefer to play Russell Wilson in that circumstance. He had an incredible game against the Cleveland Browns last time out. I'd assume that he'll continue to play well in that circumstance. So if it's me, I'm picking up and playing Russell Wilson. If you want, based on what we saw tonight, you can pick up and play Winston. I don't have an issue with it, but those are the two priorities. Thank you. Corey Miller says questions in the chat, brother. Thank you. Okay. Corey says, I need a quarterback for this week and possibly for rest of season. Should I pick up Tua, Rodgers, Rush, May, Levis, Carr, or Winston? As of right now, it's Tua Tagovailoa for rest of season. He's played incredibly well as of late, and he's only going to continue to play well in that circumstance. So, yeah, I'm very comfortable with the idea of the answer being Tua. Thank you. It says also panic on Jones. Yeah, Aaron Jones, I mean, look, the guy continues to fumble the ball consistently, which is very much so frightening. He also dropped the receiving touchdown. In the event in which those plays don't occur, like that's an 8-point swing right there. I'm not too worried about him. Again, he's still the clear and away RB1. They'll continue to feed him the rock, so I'm not too concerned about the situation as it currently stands. Josh 007 says, I just won by 2 points playing against Broncos defense. Playing against, oh man. That's, listen, you got lucky at the end there, huh? Almost a heart attack. Njoku or JMO in the flex for week 14? I'm not playing JMO. I mean, I like JMO overall, but Njoku's just got too much potential for upside in that, comparative value. Especially considering JMO requires one singular play to go for a 40-plus yard touchdown in order for him to succeed at that kind of a level. Tommy says, Big Kirko revenge game is a good play this week. I don't know if Kirk Cousins is a good play in any week henceforth. I don't know what... Like, Kirk Cousins is speed running the end of his career. Like, I'm not even joking. He is finding his way to get replaced by the rookie quarterback. So, again, he has not thrown a touchdown in each of the last 3 games. He has thrown 6 interceptions in those last 3 games. He is quickly but surely speed running an unfortunate end here. Now, it's not to say that guys like London and Mooney aren't still going to be of value. They certainly are. But ultimately, I mean, all the touchdowns are going in the direction of Bijan Robinson as of late. Someone said, do I drop Tyler Algier for Garendo? Absolutely. 150% yes. You drop anybody you can that is not going to start on your team for Garendo. He is the starting running back of the 49ers. The value that is associated with that backfield, I talked about it earlier today in the video. Thus far this season, in the 12 games that the 49ers have played, even including last night's game, the running backs on this team on a per-game average are averaging 21 rushing attempts per game and 3.3 targets per game. That kind of volume of opportunity, a vast majority of it, like 80+%, maybe even at times 90+% going in the direction of Garendo, is far too valuable to not drop the entire clip of Fab or dropping somebody on your team to get him. If you have a potential of picking him up, be sure to do so because it will, deliver for the remainder of the season here. Njoku or Kittle rest of the year? I'm still very comfortable with Kittle in that circumstance. I'm not going to give up on Kittle just off of Njoku's performance today. Kittle's still been a consistent factor that every single week, outside of course, this week, he has consistently scored touchdowns. So I'm not too worried about that. Again, if anything, considering that question, you play both of them, Allen. You play one at tight end and one in the flex. Josh 007 says, I don't know what to do with Garrett Wilson. You leave him on your bench, brother. That's what we do going forward. Twisted Folk says, I'm 9-4, tied for first place, but on top in points. Okay, so basically so if you're number 1 in points and you're tied for first, you are first place theoretically, right? Because the tiebreaker for record is points scored. So I rostered Arizona and Denver to alternate. I have Love and a wide receiver 2 options of Wilson, Metcalf, Reed. Questions in the chat. Okay, let me see what you have here, Twisted. Let's see. Twisted, where is your question? Twisted says, would you roll with Love and Metcalf/Reed? Drop Denver's defense to stream Tua, or drop Denver to pick up Keenan Allen as my wide receiver 2. My wide receivers can be good. Okay, unpredictable. Yeah, if I was in your position, I am dropping Denver's defense because they're on bye and you don't need them. And you are theoretically looking forward to the fantasy playoffs. In the fantasy playoffs, in your position, I am playing Arizona in week 15 and 16 against New England and Carolina. So in that event, I'm absolutely dropping Denver's defense. And I'm picking up Keenan Allen. I'm rolling with Jordan Love for the rest of the way, though. So Keenan Allen's the pickup in order to kind of help improve that wide receiver core of yours. Even though you do have studs there, again, there's a lot of inconsistency of play where Keenan Allen has been really great as of late since the offensive coordinator change. In terms of target share, a ridiculous number. So as long as those opportunities continue to be filtered in his direction, a lot of those red zone opportunities continue to filter, send it. Thielen or Wilson rest of season? Are we talking about Garrett Wilson or Thielen? I don't know if... Oh, man. Guys. Listen. When we get to Wednesday's wide receiver rankings, I'll probably have Garrett Wilson ranked in the top 36, but he'll probably be like number 31. Like, he'll probably be in that lower range. Because taking on Miami is already not an easy matchup. On top of that fact, has to deal with the fact that he doesn't get enough target opportunity, so it's not great. How much of my $100 should I use on Garendo? I would venture to... Look, Michael... It depends on what you have. Let's say, for example, you're playing in a league, Michael, where, I don't know, it's a 6-team league and everybody's got an all-star roster. At that point, it's like, okay, you don't need to spend all 100. But if you're playing in a 10, 12, 14-team league, all $100 should be going to Guerrero in order to secure him. That's how serious it is. I would drop all 100. Now, if you're thinking, okay, well, Andrew, I won't have any fab for the remainder of the season. At that point, bringing in or starting running back for the 49ers, you won't need another running back rest of the season because that'll just continue to build to your roster. Now, if Guerrero gets hurt, you know what? That's all she wrote. But at this point, if you have 100 and there's somebody else in your league that has 100, then you got to build, you have to blitz it out. You have to send the whole thing. But if like the next man up is like, okay, you've got 100 fab and the next highest team has 82. All right, great. I'm spending 83 and I'm getting them. That's it. And you got to make sure nobody makes any trades for fab in order to kind of beat you out on that, but you'll be fine. Marion Garcia says questions in the chat. Thank you, Marion. I appreciate it. Let's see here. Marion. Okay, I'll wait for you to type that in. Angel says Guerrero, Dobbs, Bigsby, Parker Washington, or Hollywood Brown. Pick one off of the waivers. I don't even know when Hollywood Brown is going to be available to play. Even when he is available to play and is quote-unquote cleared, I'm not going to be throwing him in my lineup because I don't trust any Kansas City wide receivers. I just don't. Like, Hopkins is the only one that I theoretically trust the most out of the group, and even then, I have him very lowly ranked because really he doesn't get enough target opportunity, doesn't play enough. So as of right now, don't really trust in picking up Hollywood Brown. If you want to pick him up and just throw him in your IR spot, that's fine. But as for the rest of those options you mentioned, Guerrero is by far and away the best option to pick up off the waivers. It's not even remotely close. Tommy says, out of these four, who do you feel most confident in starting this week? Love, Caleb, Jameis, or Rodgers? The order at which I would line them up as it currently stands would be Love, Caleb, Jameis, Rodgers. That's the order. So Love is the quarterback that I trust the most out of the bunch. John K says, do I start Waddle or Pittman or Addison? I think it depends on multiple factors. So this week, first and foremost, just so you're aware, Michael Pittman is not playing. He's on a bye week. Again, there are 6 teams on bye. The Colts, Texans, Ravens, Broncos, Washington Commanders, and if I'm not mistaken, what's the last team? Did I mention the Ravens? No, I said Colts, Texans, Broncos, Ravens, Commanders, and Patriots. So with those 6 teams on bye, you cannot play Pittman. So therefore, it's either Waddle against the Jets or Addison versus the Falcons, which in this current position, I probably end up playing Addison there. Yeah, I'd probably play Addison if it's my team as of right now. Let's see here. Tutu says, Joe Mixon and Lamar Jackson are amazing. Yes, they are. You're not wrong, brother. Marion Garcia sends in a question, says, full PPR trade, Kamara for Kyron. Considering that Kamara for Kyron in a full PPR, look, here's the issue that lies as of right now within that scenario. The Saints' upcoming schedule, when I look at it, without having Taysom Hill in the lineup, all rushing opportunities are going to be filtered in the direction of Kamara. So when they take on the Giants, Commanders, Green Bay Packers, and Raiders, they're all running funnels. He's going to succeed every single week. Honestly, if it's my team in a PPR, I'd rather have Alvin Kamara rest of the way, quite frankly. Rest of season, I prefer Kamara, full PPR, with that upcoming schedule ahead of him. Thank you. All right, let's see here. Daryl in the chat says, Caleb Williams, Will Levis, Russell Wilson for week 14. I'd go Caleb 1, Russell 2, Will Levis 3. Sharish in the chat says, man, do I start Jonnu Smith or Judy in the flex? Maybe start Jonnu over Kelsey. Please help. That's a really good question. Jonnu versus the Jets over Kelsey. Kelsey versus the Chargers has always been relatively strong. Noah Gray's definitely thrown a wrench into the system. That one I'm going to think about because you definitely have to play Judy in the flex this week when they take on Pittsburgh. But the question is, do I want to play Jonnu Smith over Kelsey? I got to think about that one. That's a good one, Daryl. Or sorry. Let's see here. Schnabel says Vidal or Edwards. Yeah, I'd rather just have Edwards at this point. Until Edwards gets injured, I'm pretty sure he's just going to hold a position. Eric says, is it crazy to drop Bigsby instead of Braylon? No, I don't think it's crazy. I mean, he was definitely the RB2 behind ETN. So that, I mean, if you want to just hold on to Braylon just in case, I don't have an issue with that. Let's see here. Twisted Folk says, thanks. Okay, no problem. Sounds good. All right, let's see here. Charlene says, your thoughts on Chris Rodriguez? I mean, after the bye week, he could potentially get himself more utilization. But here's the reality. Like, I'm not going to start Chris Rodriguez in my fantasy playoff game. When there are no teams on bye, if Chris Rodriguez is my best available back and he has to start for me, I'm in a really bad position, and I probably have even more problems than him. So, quite frankly, considering he's going on a bye, many of us cannot afford to pick him up to roster him. Theoretically, he could be the RB2, but long-term purposes, I don't really trust the RB2 of the Washington Commanders unless they're named Austin Eckler. So as of right now, Brian Robinson is the only RB for the Commanders I care about or will potentially end up starting in the coming weeks here. Tex Raider says, worth it to drop Purdy for Tua, drop Shakir, Debo for Isaac Guerrero, Thielen. Wow. Okay. Jeez Louise, brother. Okay, hold up. Baby steps here. So, Tex Raider, the question really relies upon a couple of factors. So, the idea of dropping Purdy for Tua, I don't have an issue with, okay, because they're both, pocket quarterbacks. It's purely just going to be a matter of which of the two is going to be more successful within the passing game. Obviously, Purdy has himself a couple rushing upsides here and there, but I don't mind the idea of swapping to Tua, especially considering Purdy's shoulder injury and the potential of that. If they lose another game here, they're done. They can shut him down for the remainder of the season and have him have season-ending injury in any given moment. So swapping the Tua is actually smart. Now, as for Shakir, you're keeping him on roster. That is not a question. As for the potential of dropping Debo for Isaac Guerrero, why is Debo the man that has to be dropped in this scenario? Because quite frankly, you've got to have somebody worse. Now, if you're like, Andrew, well, Debo's been 25 yards 3 consecutive weeks. He's the worst player on my team. Then I say, I understand. But geez, man, at this point, if you need a running back, sure, we can make the swap. But I bet there's got to be somebody else on your team that's worth the actual drop there. Let's see here. God's Gang sends in a question. Says, swapping out Neighbors for Judy in my flex. Yeah, sounds good to me. I have no issue with that at all. Onage says, with Bo Nix on a bye, play Purdy or stream Russell or Caleb? You know what? I probably prefer to play Russell or Caleb. I mean, at this point, I'd probably play Caleb 1, Russell 2, Purdy 3. That's probably the direction I go in. I don't like the idea of playing quarterbacks typically against that Chicago Bears defense. That Chicago Bears defense, even though Eberflus is gone, it does not make a difference. They still have an elite group in that secondary that definitely gives people problems. So I'd be worried about Purdy a little bit there. Let's hear. Crispy Chris sends in a question. Says, week 14, quarterback Caleb, Bucky. We have Walker at running back. We have JSN. We have St. Brown. We have Jonnu. We have Seattle's defense. We have Bass. My bench consists of Jennings, Garrett Wilson, Cooper, Stevenson, Rico, Laporta. What do you think? Yeah, I mean, at this point, Bucky, Walker are the best two running backs you have on roster. As for your wide receivers, JSN and St. Brown makes sense as it currently stands. Jonnu, yeah, I mean, I don't have an issue at all with the current starting roster that you have here going into this week. The only concern I would theoretically have, well, no, actually, I have no concerns here. I have questions regarding Tyler Bass, but really that's just a matter of, is there any alternative better options than him in comparison? But for right now, that's the only thing that I would theoretically ask. Crispy, thank you. All right, let's see here. Matt in the chat says, I'm dropping Garrett for Judy. Yeah, I don't have an issue with that. Kamikaze says, I have Denver's defense and the Eagles defense. Do I keep these two or go after Arizona or the Saints defense? As it currently stands, if I was in your position, I'd probably pick up Arizona's and drop Denver. Yeah, because especially when we're looking towards week 15, NFL week 15, as it stands right now for the upcoming schedule, right? The Denver Broncos will take on in week 15. Let's find it. They'll take on the Colts. Again, they will probably play, you know what? They're probably going to cause some problems there. But as it's really just going to be a matter of, can they stop the run? Am I going to play the Broncos defense, Eagles defense, or the Cardinals? I would like to play the Cardinals defense in that week of the three. That's why I'm suggesting you make the swap. And then when you get to week 16, with the Cardinals and Eagles on roster, at that point, you'd run the Cardinals again against the Carolina Panthers. And then once you get to week 17, championship weekend, then you'll pull out the Eagles and you'll beat up the Cowboys. That's the way that I would potentially go about it. Thank you. Let's see here. Caesar in the chat, okay, says, had picked up Dallas defense and forgot to start. Lost my week. Oh, because of it. Damn, dude. That's rough. Denon says, I'm picking up Keon Coleman from waivers. Is that a good pickup or no? I mean, he missed his last week's game due to the injury. I don't know if that injury is going to hold him out this upcoming week, but when I look at the upcoming schedule for the Bills, it's really just going to be a matter of like, is the weather potentially going to be a factor? Like, if the weather is a factor for his wrist injury, luckily for the next 2 games, he plays in Los Angeles and plays in Detroit. So both of them are weather games that are not going to be really impacted because they're both indoor stadium. So we should be fine. I don't have an issue picking up Keon Coleman in the event in which he plays the next couple weeks here at all. Thank you, Denon. Let's see here. Traded Andrews for Njoku, and I'm loving it right now. Yeah, that's beautiful. Kyler or Russell week 14. Do I play Kyler against Seattle? Do I play Russell versus... Honestly, I think you kind of have to play Russell there. Maybe it's my recency bias. We'll see by the time I get to Thursday. Is it Penix time? I honestly think it should be Penix time. It should be. If they legitimately want to still make the playoffs, because the reality is they're going to get caught. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to come and get them. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to make the playoffs, and unfortunately, when you play on the NFC side of the bracket, unless you have 10 to 11 wins, you are not making the playoffs this year because the Green Bay Packers, the Minnesota Vikings, the Washington Commanders, all teams that are probably going to have 10 or 11 plus wins this season, and they're all going to be the wild card seeds. So the only way to get into the playoffs right now is if you're able to win the NFC West or potentially win the NFC South. That's it. If you don't win those two divisions, you're not getting in as a wild card. So, if Penix gives them a better chance, then go for it. If they believe that what they've seen from practice from Penix is not good enough, then we'll just wait till next year because they're going to have to cut, Kirk Cousins based on how he's looked as of late. They got a lot of money invested in him, which is the rough part, though. Is Westbrook Ikine a good flex for wide receiver 3 moving forward? I would say so, yeah. Especially with a fantastic matchup like it has this week against Jacksonville, I would say absolutely. Lions or Steelers defense rest of season? I'm not too keen on playing either rest of season. The primary reason why I would say I'm not too keen is because when you get to the week 15 fantasy playoffs, the Lions play the Buffalo Bills, which I don't like. And then additionally, what was the other team that you mentioned? You said Lions or Steelers. Yeah, the Steelers have to take on the Eagles in the week 15 of the fantasy playoffs. So both of them are taking on really strong opposing teams, which doesn't make me confident about starting either of the two within the given week. So, again, kind of rough. I'd probably look to another option for week 15. Now, if you're like, hey, Andrew, I've already secured a bye week for week 15. I'm looking towards week 16. Then at that point, just give me the Eagles. Let's see here. Super Dave sends in a question. Says, drop Ford, McNichols, Vidal, Ray Davis, or Algier for Garendo. If I'm dropping... Okay, so let me see here. I own Chubb, and I have Brian Robinson. Okay, very well. When you say B. Robinson, you mean Brian, right? You don't mean Bijan. Because if you have Bijan, you'd probably keep Algier just in case. Says, should I drop second for Brooks, Sincere, or Jaleel? Okay, so as it currently stands, if I'm dropping one of these options from your team, Super Dave, again, I don't see you ever starting Ford, McNichols, Vidal, Ray Davis, Algier, unless an injury was to take place. So if I'm sitting in your position right now, considering McNichols is hitting the bye week and you're not going to even see him perform this week, I'm dropping him. I'm dropping McNichols and I'm picking up Garendo. At least I'll give Ford, Vidal, Ray Davis, Algier another week to potentially, prove to me why they should stay on roster. And then we can reevaluate going into week 15. But for right now, McNichols is the drop. Thank you, Supa. Lee Flores says, Otten or Dowdle in the flex this week? You probably... Let me see. The Dallas Cowboys, I'm trying to remember who they play this week. I know week 15 they have Carolina, but who do they play this week? Let's go find it. They play Cincinnati? Yeah, I'm comfortable going with Dowdle there. I'm fine with Dowdle. Thank you. Let's see here. Tommy Flam Studio says, dude, I just lost by 0.22 points. If I won, I make the playoffs. I lost, so I won't now. Wow, that's unfortunate. My playoffs start next week. Really? Your playoffs start in week 14? Brother, that's horrible. Had Denver's defense and was versus Bo Nix. Denver's defense needed 4.67 more. So they basically needed to return that to the house. Damn, that sucks, man. Ed says, Rico, Najee, Pacheco, or Garendo next week in a full PPR. If I'm playing... Okay, so let me tell you first and foremost. Garendo is going to be my highest ranked player of the four. Like, objectively, I'm playing Garendo this upcoming week over Pacheco, Najee, and Rico. Pacheco will probably end up being number 2 because I'm going to assume that he's going to get himself a more healthy share of opportunity after he has that last week's performance under his belt. So probably go Garendo, Pacheco, Najee, Rico in that order. That's the way that I'd start it as it currently stands. We'll know by tomorrow for sure, though. Again, I'll have my rankings out by tomorrow afternoon for the running back position. It'll obviously change by the time I get to Sunday because it always changes with more information regarding injuries, players, all that kind of stuff that is integrated within the overall equation of figuring out the projections. But for right now, that's how I kind of have it in my mind. Jay Newton says, I have Lamb, Evans, Puka, Reed. Okay, do I drop Reed for Judy just to keep him away from my league? Interesting. Do I drop Reed for Judy? Okay, so this is what I'll say. I would probably venture to say that Judy is probably a better wide receiver than Reed rest season anyway. So you might as well just make the swap just to improve your team at this point. Because if Lamb misses any time with the shoulder, just in case, Evans, Puka, Judy seems like a pretty good rotation going forward. Not to say that Reed is a bad option. He's coming off a week where he scored about 18 points, but he had like 2 touchdowns and a pretty good game mode there overall for fantasy purposes. But ultimately, Judy's just the better of the two. Bills Mafia says full PPR. Who do I play? Pick 3: Pacheco, Tracy, Connor, Chase Brown. Chase Brown has to play every week. As for the alternatives, I'd go with, so if I was going to pick 3 of these 4, I'd go Chase Brown, Connor, Pacheco. Those would be the 3 that I'd roll with. Thank you, Ed. I appreciate it. Patrick510 says Thielen, Westbrook, Odunze, full PPR. Who would you start? Any of them over Mooney this week? Yeah, I mean, I'd be willing to roll with Thielen over Mooney this week. Honestly, at this point, I'd consider Westbrook Ikine, but for right now, for sure, Thielen, though. Bo Nix or Russell Wilson for the playoffs? The issue is Russell Wilson, week 15, has the Eagles. I don't want to play Russell Wilson versus the Eagles. So I'd rather, honestly, just roll with Bo Nix there in week 15. Then as you go to week 16, you have to play it by ear. If I'm making a suggestion to you, it's purely just a matter of what other quarterback you have on roster. If you're just trying to roster only one of them, that's probably not the best order of business. Have 2 on roster so you can play matchups. Caesar says, do I use all my fab on Garendo? Yes, Caesar. Absolutely. Jorge Perez says questions in the chat. Thank you, Jorge. Jorge, type that in when you get a chance. I appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, let's see here. Charlene says, would it matter if London and Mooney play with Penix as quarterback? Time will tell. We don't know. Again, it just depends on if Penix is a good quarterback, right? It depends on how he's developed throughout, the last 12, 13 weeks of practice. Time will tell. Again, we've seen glimpses of Penix. He came in late in the game against the Denver Broncos a couple weeks back, but not enough to where I can confidently say one way or the other. Cup against the Bills or BTJ versus the Titans? That's a good question. I'm definitely going to play Cup there, though. I'm definitely going to play Cup there. BTJ was fine. I mean, again, he got saved by Mac Jones. That could have been a really rough week, though, because of, the Trevor Lawrence absence. Let's see here. Where's Jorge's question? Jorge, you there? There it is. It says, hey, Andrew, in a full PPR, I want to pick up Garendo and the Seahawks defense. Who should I drop? 49ers, Cowboys, or Hunt? I have a lot of running backs, but I'm playing... Okay, got it. Cowboys have to be dropped. Absolutely. They don't have an upcoming matchup that I'm interested in. So Cowboys are your first drop. And then I'd honestly be willing to drop the 49ers defense as well. When I look at the upcoming schedule for the 49ers, again, their defense hasn't been superb this season. They have the Bears, Rams, Dolphins, and the Lions. Again, I'd venture to probably just dropping both those defenses in order to pick up Garendo and the Seahawks. I'd keep Hunt just in case. Thank you. Tua over Caleb or Baker this week? Am I playing Tua over Baker? That's really the question. Baker versus the Raiders seems very enticing. Am I playing... I'd probably go Baker. Damn, man. Depends. For now, again, it could probably change by the time I get to Thursday, but for right now, I'd go Baker, Tua, Caleb in that order. All right, let's see here. 26 bands up says, I need help. 8-man full PPR. Need a flex between Flowers, Hall, Aaron Jones, Metcalf, Pacheco, or drop who? What do you mean drop? What would we pick up? It says for Judy Westbrook. Dude, Judy's available in your league? That is ridiculous. Yeah, if you can pick up Judy and potentially... Dude, if you're... Oh, man, look, that's the issue. You've got Pacheco, Hall. I'm not dropping these guys for Judy because I want these running backs on roster. But you're playing in an 8-man league, so the idea of dropping Flowers for him isn't actually a bad thing. And then theoretically throwing him into your lineup this week actually probably ends up being the play. Drop JMO for Ikine? I wouldn't go as far as that. That's a little bit too much for me, in my opinion. Nick L says, I just need to win the last game and the guy above me to lose. to the last place team. Oh, damn. So you got to just hope that the last place team actually sets their lineup this week. I have Kyler, not my favorite quarterback. Drake May, Jameis Richardson on the waivers. Richardson's, again, not going to play this week because of the bye week, and neither is Drake May. So you're either playing Kyler or Jameis. Pick up any of these for secondary options. Yeah, look, if for the future, I wouldn't mind picking up Anthony Richardson. But as for this week, am I playing Jameis Winston ahead of Kyler Murray? I don't go as far as that. No, I'd probably just roll with Kyler still, as it currently stands. But again, it's early. It's still Monday. I've yet to do any research regarding Week 14. The only thing I've done is waiver wire. So again, it could change by the time we get to Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday's rankings. As the week progresses, we'll get more and more information in our direction. And once everything kind of settles out in terms of injuries, situations, all that kind of jazz, we'll have a clearer picture by the time we get to Thursday and Sunday. Is it time to play Isaac Guerrero over Garrett Wilson Week 14? Jonathan, yes, absolutely. Do you think DJ Moore is good for the rest of the season? Absolutely, Evan. Absolutely. Not only has the offense improved dramatically since the offensive coordinator change, but losing the head coach, I mean, everybody was pretty much against Eberflus. Even, I mean, more than anybody, it was DJ Moore who was ripping him up in the press conferences literally every week. So going forward, yeah, I mean, look, DJ Moore's going to continue to get himself a fair share of opportunity. They have a great upcoming schedule, so I'm pretty excited about that for him and Keenan Allen. What are we doing with Breece Hall? I mean, if you have an alternative option, you're probably benching him. If you don't have an alternative option, you're probably forced to play him and pray. I mean, that's really just the way that we go about it. Any word on Olave? Based on what I heard last week, they asked the interim head coach of the New Orleans Saints how he's doing. He didn't give us like a status update as to like, oh, he's planning on coming back at this point. It was mainly just a matter of like, he's doing well right now. He's in a good place right now. We'll see what that ends up meaning in a couple weeks here. Let's see here. Supa says, okay, so we took care of that. Ron the Don says, damn, I was able to get Joe Burrow for Derek Carr plus Justice Hill after they both popped off in week 1 and 2. The guy already dropped Josh Allen and Chris Olave, so yeah, that's crazy. All right, Jolly Pop says, where are you going to make a video for playoffs? When are you going to make a video for playoffs? Okay, so Jolly, my question is, what are you looking for in terms of a quote-unquote playoff video? Like, what do you mean in that regard? Are you talking about like strength of schedule? Or what exactly are we talking? Jonathan Blum says, pick 1.5 PPR, Garrett Wilson versus Miami, Marvin Harrison versus Seattle, Dowdle versus Cincinnati. I'd probably go with Marvin Harrison between the three. Hugh Banks sends in a question, says, should we target any defenses playing the Giants rest of the season? Absolutely. Every defense playing the Giants every week will be a streaming option on my waiver wire video every week, and they will probably always be ranked in the top 12. So when we look at the upcoming schedule for the Giants, they not only have this week the Saints, but next week they have the Baltimore Ravens. So if somebody drops okay, so hear me out. This is the master plan. Someone in your league this week is going to drop the Ravens defense because the Ravens are on bye. In the event that they do so, to prepare for week 15 for the first round of the fantasy playoffs, if you can snag the Baltimore Ravens defense off of the waivers this week after they're dropped because someone in your league is most likely going to drop them, you'd pick them up and play them in week 15 against the Giants. Now, the week after, you have the Atlanta Falcons, and then the final week of the fantasy football season, the Colts versus the Giants. Again, these are all streaming options against the Giants. They are a terrible defense. Regardless of who plays quarterback, Drew Lock or Mr. Tommy Cutlets, the defenses will succeed. Let's see here. Kamikaze says, Steelers defense or Vikings defense week 14? As of right now, am I playing Steelers or Vikings? I'd probably play the Vikings defense this week. Start Kyle Pitts or Disley. Pick up a tight end. I mean, you probably in your best interest to pick up a tight end because Disley and Kyle Pitts are pretty much no-shows as of late. I know that the head coach of the Falcons specifically did say on Sunday after the game, he said, I want to see Kyle Pitts get more utilization within the offense. I want him to, potentially get more opportunities. We'll have to wait and see. Jolly Pop says, yes, strength of schedule. Okay. In terms of strength of schedule, the thing is, so how many of you guys in the chat still have a bye week available? Or it's not bye week, sorry. How many of you in the chat are past your trade deadline? I don't know why bye week came out of my mind or out of my mouth. So the question is, how many of you can still make trades? Because even if I show you the rest of the season strength of schedule, isn't that irrelevant unless you're in a position where you have the ability to trade. So unless your trade deadlines, if it's passed already, then it's irrelevant to make that video. You know what I'm saying? That's the only reason why I haven't. I haven't made that in a couple weeks now. I think the last time we mentioned it was back in week 12 or 11 in terms of relative season strength of schedule that was associated with the rankings videos. Yeah. Trade deadline passed this week. No more trades in my leagues. Yeah, look, that would be the thing. So I wouldn't mind the idea of like sharing it with you guys, being like, okay, these teams have the best strength of schedule for the fantasy playoffs. But the fact of the matter is, it's going to be irrelevant, right? Because nobody can make trades anyway. And I'm pretty sure almost every league has even if your league doesn't have a trade deadline until the end of the fantasy football regular season, like week 14, at this point, it's going to be pretty difficult unless you have already made the playoffs to trade 4 players that are on bye week, right? Or vice versa. Like if somebody has all their players on bye, they're going to probably want to trade them away. While on the opposite end, if you're like, listen, I can't afford to trade for bye week players, it just becomes a little bit difficult. Lelexo sends it a question, says, which 2 would you flex for the playoffs in a half PPR? Okay. So really quickly, I'm just going to preemptively say this. When you're asking me about the playoffs, weeks 15, 16, 17, my answer that I'm going to give you right now today is going to change by the time we get to week 15. I can promise you that, guaranteed. Okay. Anyway, answering your question, which of these players am I playing for the fantasy playoffs? Judy, Dowdle, Mooney, Jennings. Okay. And Neighbors and Flowers. Okay. So of these available options, if we're talking about week 15 in specific, let's pull up week 15. Of these available, who am I starting? Let's see here. We have, okay. So probably in your best interest, I mean, at this point, Neighbors is not a bad play against the Ravens, but I don't love it with Drew Lock there. That's not great either. So what does Jennings play against that week? Jennings is against the LA Rams. Yeah. So if I was in your position, Lelexel, preemptively for week 15, I'm probably rolling with Judy and Jennings. That's probably where I'm going. Assuming Purdy plays. Thank you. James P says, Irving, London, Kenneth Walker, full PPR, pick 2. I mean, as long as Bucky Irving's healthy, there's no way we're not starting him, right? I think that is a clear designation. Now, as for Kenneth Walker and London in a full PPR, I'd like to play London there. So Irving and London are my 2 suggestions. Jolly just says, I just want to see you rank for playoff schedule, strength of schedule, like defenses, running backs, wide receivers. Free agency is still solid. Free agency is still solid. You must play in a smaller league. Yeah, listen, I'll consider adding it to the end of the videos in the next couple of days to kind of have that extra section. But yeah, I think majority of teams or majority of leagues are past their bye weeks. Why do I keep calling it bye weeks? Majority of leagues are past their trade deadlines. Man, why do I call them bye weeks? Okay, let's see here. Patrick says, do I drop Tracy, Algier, or Benson for Isaac? At this point, it depends on what else. Okay, you have Bijan. Okay, got it. Patrick, at that point, you're going to drop Benson. Well, you know what? Am I dropping out? You know what? If I was you, I would drop Algier there. I'd rather have Benson on roster just in case. Had said Parker/Dobbs over Amari Cooper. PPR flex. Yeah. So Luke, see, I answered it a little while ago, but I'll gladly reiterate what my answer was. So earlier you had asked regarding a whole slew of players. Let me see if I can go find your question. I don't actually. Okay. So I don't see the full extension of your question. I do remember saying that if Romeo Dobbs does clear concussion protocol prior to Thursday's game, I would play him. Otherwise, I'd pivot to playing Parker Washington. That was my suggestion. Luke C. Hopefully you heard that this time. Thank you. Okay, it says, would you play Stafford or should I pick up Tua? This week, I don't want to play Stafford against Buffalo. I'd rather play Tua. Joseph Mai says, is Kyle Pitts droppable if I have Njoku? Yes. William Trevino says, I was down 6 points versus Kittle. Christmas miracle. Yeah, that is beyond a Christmas miracle, brother. That is ridiculous. Yafi says, where do you rank Garendo rest of season? Is he a high-end RB2 in desperate need? I mean, regardless of whether he's a high-end RB2, an RB2, a low-end RB2, it doesn't really matter. If you're in need of a running back, you're picking him up, right? So regardless of where he ends up panning out, like where I have him valued, I would say he's a middle of the pack RB2 because he doesn't get himself any receiving upside. If he's to catch the ball twice in a singular game, I think we're blessed in that scenario by the fantasy gods. But going forward, I would probably venture to say middle of the pack RB2, so probably ranks between RB 16 to 20 within given weeks in a matchup in which, again, it's a more favorable one where the run stop defense does not exist. I'd potentially have him as a higher end RB2, but again, it's going to fluctuate as an RB2 factor because touchdowns and receiving yards are very much so a dependent factor of players getting into that top tier conversation, which oftentimes he's not exposed to on a consistent enough basis. Alrighty, let's see here. Kamikaze says, thanks, Drew. Lots of questions. Yep, no problem. What running backs do I start week 14? As of right now, Kamikaze, I'm going to suggest that we just wait till tomorrow because I'll for sure have the answer of what I want to do with Mike. What's happening with my mic? There's nothing wrong with my mic. Let me listen to it. Yep, I'm listening to my own video. I don't know what you guys are talking about. There's literally nothing wrong with my microphone. Mic is cutting in and out. I'm listening to my stream. I'm listening to it because I want to know who I need to ban. Yep. Whoever said it first is getting banned. I'm not even joking. That is the most hated thing possible. So if everyone's saying, if there's people that's saying it's fine and people are saying, okay, you know what? For this time, this is what I'll say. For now, I know for a fact that my mic does not clip out. There are times that if I look away, it's going to sound a little bit lesser of volume. But worst case scenario, in the future, don't even point out my mic because that is one thing that will tilt me off the face of the earth because I do everything in my power to make sure the mic does not ever clip out for future purposes, just so we're all on the same page. Don't point out the mic. If at any point it cuts out, don't even point it out. Because if you're wrong, I'm going to be so pissed, I'll ban you. That's how bad it is. I might be a little bit sensitive on the matter, but there have been multiple times where I've been trolled, where people are like, your mic's broken. And I'm sitting there for 20 minutes trying to fix it. There was nothing wrong with it in the first place. I'm not fucking, no more of this shit. All right? No more. Okay, we're on the same page. Cool. All right, so continuing on answering questions. Yeah, that's the number one way to tilt me. Says, can I get an assessment on Brooks? Yeah, look, here's the thing about Brooks. He's not a startable option. Until further notice, I would probably say he's not going to be a startable option unless Chuba Hubbard misses time or unless we're at a potential in which, hear me out, Chuba Hubbard gets injured. Let's hope that doesn't occur, but that's the only time that, unfortunately, as of right now, Jonathan Brooks is going to be useful. So we look towards the next season as to whether or not we're going to use him. Okay, let's see here. Tip of the horn, we took care of that. Joseph Mai says, are the Texans defenses drop now for my playoffs? Yeah, you don't want them. Again, you're not going to need to use them for the remainder of the season, especially considering they're going on bye. Try to pick up somebody else this week. Sorry, guys. Listen, again, the mic thing will piss me off. There are a couple things that will trigger me. That is the number one. I apologize if you think that, I blew the gasket. I know I blew the gasket, but, that's just normal me. If anything like that happens and my actual hardware goes to the shitter, it's more that I'm not even angry at you guys. I'm more that angry that the actual situation could exist. Brandon Hunt says, just left and came back. It's fine. Okay, cool. Interesting. So basically, YouTube is sabotaging me is what I'm hearing. Okay, Patrick says, is Mooney droppable for Westbrook? I don't think so. No, not yet. Look, if you want to risk the Westbrook play, go for it. I don't know if I'm at that point yet to where I am making the swap. I could justify it, though. Absolutely. I mean, he scores touchdowns every week. So he's pretty much 10 points. And then he has the upside of what he did this last week, which is, 20 plus. If I got Gibbs, Kamara, and Tracy, still grab Isaac. Grab Isaac. At this point, yes, because you would play Isaac Guerrero over Tracy the rest of the season. Absolutely. Especially week 15. You got to think about it this way, Static. Tracy plays against the Baltimore Ravens in week 15. That is not a matchup in which I am very excited about. So I would look to potentially picking up Guerrero so I can utilize him within the specific flex position if you are in need of it. Stash Xavier Worthy or Parker Washington for the playoffs. I'm not really interested in Xavier Worthy. Again, all of the receiving options of the Kansas City Chiefs are pretty sketchy. Thoughts on the Seattle defense going forward? I mean, looking at their upcoming schedule, specifically if we talk about like the fantasy playoffs, to begin taking on the Green Bay Packers, I have no interest in playing them there. And then you go to week 16, and at that point they play the Vikings. I'm not interested in playing them there. So outside of this week in specific, I'm not really too interested in the overall circumstance. Is Odunze droppable? Yeah, I would say that he's, for Westbrook, yeah. I mean, at this point, look, the upcoming schedule is relatively favorable, but Odunze is obviously not the preferred 1 or 2 of the offense. And at times this season, he's actually preferred Cole Kmet, at a greater extent. So as of right now, I'd say that theoretically, yes, he is droppable if you are going to start Westbrook. If you're just picking up Westbrook to leave him on your bench, then at that point, I'd probably just keep Guerrero. If it's me, I mean, not Guerrero, sorry. I'd rather just keep Odunze at that point. Speaking of Guerrero, I just read it by Gary in the chat. Says Guerrero over BTJ, D-Hop this week? Probably over D-Hop. Now, as of over BTJ, taking on the Titans, that one is going to be close. If it's a full PPR, I'd probably still play BTJ there. If it's a half PPR standard, I'd go with Guerrero. I think that's the direction I'm leaning in as of right now. Schnabel says full PPR. Should I drop Christian McCaffrey for Marshawn Lynch? Yeah, you probably should, brother. Let's see here. Abdullah says started Stafford, Bryce Young, Jameis Winston. Okay, Stafford, Bryce Young, Jameis Winston, Carr to fill for. Okay, cool. In regards to potential options there, am I playing Aiden O'Connell? No. Jameis is probably the best option of the bunch there, Abdullah, for this week. And it says also, do I start Connor or BTJ in a full PPR? I'd probably be BTJ there this week. Odunze or Parker Washington. Again, if you're looking to pick up one of them to play it specifically this week, then yes, you'd pick up Parker Washington and play him this week. Thank you, Daniel. Appreciate it. What's up, man? Joseph Mai says, how do you memorize all the upcoming matchups? Brother, it's all I look at, dude. Ron the Don says, yo, chat, are we firing up Tua? Yeah, absolutely. Sauce Gardner has a hamstring injury. Sauce Gardner probably has a hamstring injury, which means I don't want to play anymore this year. We keep losing. Randy Wagner says, Jameis Winston, 497 yards and 4 touchdowns against the primo Denver defense. Way to go, Jameis. Character matters, unfortunately, for Cleveland. The Browns lost. Yeah. Listen, we love to see it. Anytime Jameis Winston can go out there and serve our fantasy teams, with some points, specifically Elijah Moore, Jerry Jeudy, David Njoku, we are more than happy to see it. Broncos, Cardinals, Steelers, Vikings, Packers defense rest of season. That's a pretty good question. William Trevino, I probably lean towards... I don't mind the idea of holding the Vikings defense for the rest of the way, but honestly, I probably stick with the Cardinals there because I really do like their week 15 and 16 matchup. Actually, the next 3 weeks, 14, 15, 16, I love the Cardinals defense. Week 17 against the Rams also could be one that is favorable for them. God's Gang says, thoughts on Pacheco and Kansas City playoffs clinched? I mean, here's the thing. Are the playoffs clinched? Not yet. So we're going to need a couple weeks from now until we get to that position. If anything, once the Chiefs have clinched their number 1 seed, if they even get there, once they clinch it, they're not going to play in week 18. So you'll see all Chiefs play until week 17. That's for sure. Maddie says, do I drop Otton and pick up Mark Andrews? Yeah. I have Jonnu Smith. That sounds good to me. Daryl says, should I stash Juwan Johnson, Fryer Muth, Cole Kmet, or Dalton Schultz for backup of Evan Ingram? At this point, I'd pick up Juwan Johnson in order to have that backup. That's what I would lean in the direction of. Preliminary quarterback rankings for this week, week 14. Murray, Tua, Wilson, Williams, Winston. As of right now, I would go with Tua this week, Joseph. Will Levis or Pacheco in my super flex. I'd rather, if it's me legitimately, I'd rather play Will Levis against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jonathan Blum says Tua or Jameis. I'd rather have Tua this week. Saints or Bengals defense this week. I'd much rather have the Saints defense. Let's see here. We took care of God's gang. We took care of God's gang again. Okay, good to go. Appreciate it. Luis Perez says, you missed my super chat. Luis, perhaps, potentially earlier, you may have stepped out of the room, or maybe I just outright missed it. I did outright miss it. You want to know why I outright missed it? Because I was tilting about the mic. Okay, never mind. That's my bad, Luis. It says, must win. Start O'Connell, Rush, Carr, Levis. If I'm starting one of those 4 quarterbacks, I am playing Will Levis. And then as for MVS or Thielen, at this point, I'd lean towards probably playing Thielen there. So Thielen and Levis are going to be my suggestions there, Luis Perez. My apologies for skipping that again. I got tilted earlier. Let's see here. We're good to go. Angel Montero says, Chiefs defense has been disappointing. Drop them? Yeah, absolutely. I'm with that. Again, you know, that's the thing. The Chiefs offense has relied upon their incredible defense as of late. Considering their defense is falling apart, their offense is beginning to obviously be exposed slowly but surely. They should have lost against the Carolina Panthers, and arguably absolutely should have lost against the Las Vegas Raiders if it wasn't for the fact that their kicker missed, 3 kicks? So that's going to be rough. All right, guys. Got a couple more questions in me, and then we're going to pack it in. I'm going to go figure out my running back rankings for tomorrow, and we'll have that video posted. I'll be back tomorrow night starting at 7 p.m. once again, like we do every single Tuesday night here on the channel. So if you guys are interested, swing on by tomorrow night, 7 p.m. PST. Couple more questions here. Let's see here. Christian K says, early thoughts on Keenan Allen, Waddle, Pittman, Addison in a full PPR. Okay, so early thoughts. As it currently stands, this is a rest of season question, or is this a... Well, yeah, I'm going to assume this is not a week 14 question because Pittman's not playing this week. He's on bye, Christian. So if we're talking about rest of season, the preference is going to be in the favor of Keenan Allen, number 1. Now, going forward after that, I'd probably go with, depending on Josh Downs' injury, if that injury is not going to be as serious as we potentially expect, number 2 would be Waddle, 3 would be Pittman, and Addison would be 4. 513 Rookie says, standard drop Taylor for Garendo. Taylor for Garendo? When you say Taylor, you mean Jonathan Taylor, brother? No, I'm not dropping Jonathan Taylor for Garendo. I'd much rather have Jonathan Taylor rest of the season. It says I must roster 4 RBs. Cool. So in your scenario here, 513 Rookie, you don't make any swaps. You don't make any changes. You keep your roster as is because Taylor, Walker, Pacheco, and Chase Brown are preferred rest of the way as it currently stands. I can make an argument as to Garendo potentially outvaluing Pacheco, but I can't objectively say that as it currently stands. Which wide receiver should I trade Tyrone Tracy in a half PPR? I have too many backs. If you're going to trade away Tyrone Tracy for a wide receiver, who's a wide receiver that just had a... Well, actually, you know what? You would trade for a receiver that's going on bye this week. So if you don't need a player to play specifically this week, go and look at one of the plethora of teams that are on a bye. There's 6 of them. And just try to go yoink a potential top-tier wide receiver off of them. That's what you would try to do. Unfortunately, it may be difficult because Tracy is not the best option, and he hasn't had a consistent slate of great games as of late. So it's going to be a little bit more difficult to sell him off in that circumstance. Okay, guys, that's where I'm going to call it. I appreciate y'all coming through. I'll be back tomorrow again, 7 p.m. PST. Otherwise, we'll be talking all things running back tomorrow afternoon with the video posted. I'm going to go ahead and cue the music. Have a great rest of your night. Much love to all of you. Outside of that, that's where we'll call it. And until next time, I'll see you guys. Peace. Here we go. Let's go find this, and we're good to go. Later, guys.